Canada has re-elected Justin Trudeau, but this time under a minority Liberal government. So does this government have what it takes to lead Canadians through what many expect will be a coming recession? Joining me today from the NASDAQ is Kevin O'Leary, chairman of O'Shares ETFs and the star of ABC's hit show Shark Tank. Kevin, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us here on Kitco News from the NASDAQ today.
Yes, thank you.
So lots of ground to cover with you here, Kevin.
Yep.
But first, a lot of Canada's top economists now predicting that Canada's growth rate will decelerate next year and that there's a 45% chance that the country may head into a recession. So how do Canadians prepare against this backdrop here?
It's very difficult. What's occurred here over the Trudeau's first mandate, where he enjoyed a majority government, which is a very powerful thing to have in Canada in the parliamentary system, he basically ignored the West and the whole energy infrastructure and decided that that was not a priority. Capital flows collapsed because Canada is driven, and now he's beginning to realize it, by the tremendous wealth that energy brings. And you've got to maintain that base, regardless of your political stripes. You have to make sure that you're getting your fair share of energy in terms of transfer payments. And that the delta now, the loss per day, and why the West is so unhappy with the Trudeau mandate, is 62 million Canadian dollars a day, per day. You've got a collapse in the Alberta economy. You have absolutely no representation anymore in the government from the West. So here's what I predict is going to happen. When the rest of the world saw this occurring, they just pulled their capital out of Canada, and it all flowed into shale in the US and other energy projects. Part of that was lack of executional skills. Morneau was not a CapEx finance minister. He missed the boat on designing CapEx programs that were competitive with the US. He's actually an actuarial accountant from the insurance industry, so that was a miss. Certainly, in the case of foreign affairs, we had a journalist, and still do, running foreign affairs, not a diplomat. So we actually, as a country, for lack of a better word, pissed off India, Russia, China, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, basically tweeting the wrong things, and that capital flowed away from Canada. Now, how do you start that up? And I don't think you can.
Well, and that's a really good point, Kevin, because more than Trudeau's victory, the bigger picture here is this.
Are you calling that a victory?
What you call it, whatever you want,
right.
But more than that, it's the divide that we're seeing in Canada now, right? The Liberals completely shut out of
What
Western
is the
Canada.
definition of leadership if it isn't to unite a country? Here's a guy that's so poor in executional skills, in strategic skills, in any kind of vision and leadership, and if I may be critical, he has destroyed unity in Canada because he doesn't know what it means.
Well, I'm concerned about, not only the West, but the resurgence of the Bloc Québécois in Quebec.
Yeah.
Did that surprise you, how many seats they picked up there? And is sovereignty really alive and fervent again in Quebec, Kevin?
I think now Canada desperately needs new leadership from either party that has a better tone and tune in terms of unifying the potential of the country on an economic basis. You talk about a 45% probability of recession. That's because we have incredibly weak leadership in every mandate. I've said this before, and I hate to be critical, but at this point, we have to speak the truth. And we have not a B team or a C team. We have a D team running the country. Here's what's going to happen. You know the history. The best way to say what's the future is going to bring us look at history in Canada. Minority governments don't last very long. I predict 6 to 9 months. We will be swapping out leadership on both parties. Scheer, if we're going to do, post-mortem on the election,
yep.
Won the popular vote, but because he polled so low with women in the 905 in the Ontario region, he only ever achieved 26% acceptance. We're going to have to find a new leader for the party that can actually poll 45, 50% with women, so that we can, at least for the Conservatives, have a chance of getting...
Who do you think's the best person for that
Peter,
right now?
Peter MacKay is, they're trying to get him groomed for this. He may or may not want to do it. But I would also suggest that there are some very strong women cabinet ministers that may want to step up. But the party needs to do some soul searching and find new leadership. And certainly you want somebody who can poll better with women. And so, and I like Andrew Scheer, but the numbers are the numbers. And he missed the opportunity in the last 3 weeks of the election to bring out Lisa Raid or bring out, I mean, even she lost her seat.
Right.
He could have helped her. They could have helped each other. If they'd polled together, it would have looked better from the women's side of things. But anyways, that's all history. We're going to have a new election. We're going to have 2 new leaders. I don't think Trudeau will never garner a majority government again. Too much of the country doesn't like him. And that's clear in the fact that we have this...
He's repeating the pattern of his father.
Well, yeah, but,
right?
but, you know, at the end of the day, the new opportunity is 2 new candidates, and then we'll see what happens.
All right. More crazy figures for you here, Kevin. This one really shocked me. A recent Ipsos research report says that close to 50% of Canadians are only $200 away from financial insolvency, and close to 30%, can't pay their debt. So, what policies does the government need to put in place here to ensure Canadians are going to maintain their spending power here?
This is a tragedy that occurred 20 years ago because we don't put financial literacy into our curriculum in any province. We have to change how we educate children. We teach them everything about geography, math, reading, but never financial literacy. We don't explain what a credit card is. We don't talk about debt with them at early ages. This is something that most provinces have a new initiative, as they do in the U.S. Florida, for example, has made it mandatory that you give financial literacy classes to high schoolers, so you don't end up in a situation like this.
So with household savings now lower than Americans for the average Canadian, do you think if a recession were to hit Canada, would it be worse than one that were to hit the States?
Canada is not competitive globally now because of the last 4 or 5 years of policy. It's been just devastating. They've just fallen behind. We had that huge opportunity to become China's #1 trading partner for commodities. But we have a journalist running foreign affairs, and she arrested the Huawei daughter, which was so dumb. And now we're paying the price for it. I mean, these mistakes cost, my point is, these mistakes cost Canadians. And you're now talking about how it's manifesting itself. We're falling behind. We may have a recession. Canadians are in a desperate situation. They're fully taxed. You can't tax any more out of them. It's the last country you want to invest in. The poorest place to put your money over the last 4 years was Canada, the worst of the G7. So this unrest remains, and this probably, you're right, it will be, if a recession hits Canada, it will be devastating for the West, for Alberta, for the West. I mean, they don't have their engine of growth anymore because Trudeau hates energy. Everybody knows that. He bought a pipeline and shut it down and has no ability or leadership skills to bring it back to life. I mean, such harsh criticism, but it's the truth. That's the problem. I'm just speaking the truth, and it's even hard for me to say it. I feel so sorry for my country. Such weak leadership.
All right, well, let's now end it on the U.S. and let's talk U.S. equities. Here we are at the NASDAQ, the Fed lowering rates yesterday. No big surprise there. Market at all-time highs. Thoughts?
Yeah,
thoughts
I mean,
on the US?
the thing is, it's the circus in Washington just gets crazier, right? We've got the impeachment thing, but I'm an investor, so I focus on policy. Never has the U.S. economy done so well with the policy it has because it's a very pro-business, pro-growth, pro-energy, deregulatory theme across the state and the federal mandates where they're deregulating their economy. They've got hundreds of billions pouring into infrastructure projects here around energy specifically. They're energy independent now. I wish I was describing Canada, by the way, but I'm not. I'm talking about the U.S. And as a result, you've got this massive recapitalization of equities and the market's at all-time highs.
Right.
And so it's been a great place to deploy capital because it has good policy.
Right. Is that in a way frightening though? Because at one point, does something have to give?
Well,
right?
I think what the market is telling you, even though we've got impeachment discussions and the circus in Washington I just spoke of, is that there's a potential of a trade deal with China that would give another 15% upside to the market if it was resolved quickly. And we don't know how fast. We've got stage 1 maybe being signed on the 17th, and capital's pouring into the market with the anticipation that the financial services market will start there. But it doesn't deal with IP, and it doesn't deal with access to the middle or the Chinese market. But when those come, U.S. companies will really enjoy an advantage. Not Canada, because we're keeping that woman under lock and key to make sure we can't do any business with China, which let me say one more time, is completely insane. What a stupid move that was. And meanwhile, on grain alone, Trump is negotiating a $50 billion deal that should have been. See, it hurts me to watch this happen, and every Canadian should say, who did that to me? Justin Trudeau did that to you. He's not that good. That's the problem. He didn't understand that he got snookered. I know I'm going back into the Canadian thing, but I'm pointing out Canadians are better off putting their money into the U.S. than their own country because they have such poor leadership.
So your favorite sectors right now?
Oh, my goodness. I love energy right now.
Yep.
U.S. energy. There is no energy business in Canada anymore. Justin made sure of that. But you want to put some money into energy. I love healthcare in the U.S. I love pharma. They're being beaten down by all of the political rhetoric, but tremendous cash flows, very reasonable. I like Europe right now as it's coming out of this whole, the monetary policy there is very, very accommodative. So it looks like that equity market will also do well. And I love what's happening on the opportunity in tech is back with growth.
Yes,
so we should
let's
speak.
talk about that. Yeah,
so there's obviously a lot of rhetoric going on with politicians. And let's take one case study, Facebook.
Yes.
Facebook is under siege, even though it is probably the most powerful job growth engine in America. When you think about small businesses, which are the majority of new jobs, they all use Facebook to acquire customers. So that narrative hasn't come out yet. But you've got every politician bashing Facebook, saying they're rigging elections and all the rest of this stuff. I think the company's doing a phenomenal job in creating jobs in the United States. And you're going to see a lot of pushback, I think, when they start to talk about that. But at the end of the day, tech is growing again. And so FANG has been a good place to put your money.
Well, let's talk about the pushback from Libra, from Jack Dorsey, not endorsing Libra going his own route now.
Twitter's not a growth platform anymore, so it didn't really matter that he took political spending off it. It just moved on to all the other platforms. If you're a politician, there's plenty of places to put your money. So it doesn't matter that Twitter's not doing it. And I'm sure the rest of the digital platforms won't ban political ads going into, just like network television doesn't ban those because it's such a profit center for them. So I think at the end of the day, that's not going to make much of a difference. What I think is crazy is having politicians try and design the feature sets of companies. So you've got politicians saying, let's change how Facebook does this, or let's split it up, or whatever. I want to remind you, in 1985, the number one tech company on earth, the largest market cap company on the S&P, was IBM. And the same rhetoric was being applied to it by politicians then. And here we have a situation where IBM is practically non-existent today because the market took care of it. It just didn't follow what it needed to. It had weak management or whatever. So the market takes care of losers in technology pretty quickly. And I think I never worry about, do we have to regulate Facebook? Do we have to regulate Google? Do we have to regulate Amazon? We don't have to because the market does it. And so we need more free market activity going on. And that's why these stocks don't really correct when you see a politician barking at them. It doesn't really matter because I know that this will go away after the election. And if Facebook's going to be a great company, it's going to have to stay very competitive in helping small businesses like mine acquire customers. Probably my number one spend last year across my portfolio was Facebook and Instagram, followed by Google, followed by Amazon. They're all very important to me. And the last thing I want is politicians messing with that model because they have no idea what they're doing.
Kevin O'Leary, we covered a lot of ground today.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate you coming here at the NASDAQ. Thank you for joining us, and come back more often.
And I think we're going to have an election within 9 months up.
Well, then we'll have a lot more juicy content.
Brand new leaders, brand new content.
All right, look forward to more discussions. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks.